Hi, welcome back to Spring CS170. We're going to pick up with our week 13 topic, electronic payments. We were on crowdfunding and crowdsourcing before. Before I go into electronic payments, let me go into this. This is folded. This is something that I was mentioning before, which I thought was on the slides, but evidently not. So it's this idea of gamification, right? It's still along the lines of crowdsourcing where you're using a large population. Well, I shouldn't say a large population, a population of people um, to contribute to some outcome, some positive outcome, some value add. So folded is one of those types of things that is a category of crowdsourcing, but a little bit more of a niche in the idea of gamification. Okay, so they kind of created this idea, and you kind of see it in some other things too, where in this case they're looking at protein folding. Okay, and everybody is kind of contributing to this, and um, you know, out of all these different ideas and contributions, like people are trying to uh, win a game, right? Essentially, right? And for those of you who have played some of these type of games, um, where there are certain types of parameters that kind of spur people to keep on coming back, right? It's almost like the slot machine in the casino or something like that, where people keep on coming back, whether it's like they want a sense of accomplishment or whatever. So it's a little bit secondary from their perspective, the individual's perspective. It's a little bit secondary to the overall goal. For some people, it is the overall goal, to get to that outcome. But for a lot of people, they're trying to win a game, right? And there's like different things that you might recognize for some addictive games, which utilizing those principles that people are actually helping to contribute to a solution to a problem. Okay, so in this case, um, and I'm just kind of scrolling through the Wikipedia page, which of course all of you can do the same thing, right? You can kind of read through some of these things. I'm not going to really read through all of these. It's just kind of like a thing that you can look at on your own time to look at a case of crowdsourcing using the idea of gamification. Okay, um, so yeah, you can look at this. It's basically looking at protein structures, and the scientists that are involved with this, they kind of pick like promising you know selections out of this that actually can actually contribute to some greater good. Okay, so you can look at this and see if there's any questions on this idea. But that's the basic idea of gamification, where folded is one of those examples. The NASA doing the stuff with Mars, that's another example which I mentioned in the last lecture. Okay, so I'm not going to spend more time on this. Let me move on. So electronic payments, probably a lot of you have experience with this. Um, frankly, the United States is probably a bit behind compared to some other countries like China, for example, where electronic payments are much more prevalent. Um, you know, I guess there's like different models. People are trying to push different things, and they're trying to do things to figure out how they can monetize these type of things. Um, some players, sort of like Amazon and Apple, are trying to leverage their user base to build on that, to basically have uh, this critical mass of people that would adopt and use it, right? So it's like supporting their ecosystem, right? So let me kind of be more specific. Let's say Amazon. So let's say, you're in a situation like Amazon where practically almost all the needs in your life kind of center around Amazon, like in terms of what you may be purchasing, right? Whether you're purchasing uh, retail goods, maybe you're purchasing services, whatever it is, like there's like all kinds of stuff you may be engaging with Amazon on, right? And uh, once you do that, then Amazon, I mean, I'm only giving Amazon as an example. There's other players, obviously, that have a lot of players, Apple being one of them, maybe Walmart, some of these other players, where they say, well, you know, I can actually provide a way for people to maintain a store of money within my system, right? So when you say the electronic payments, there's an aspect of where you just kind of say, well, it's almost like your credit card, where your credit card, you go around to different places, or you might be punching your credit card number into into different things to pay for whatever, right? Well, okay, that's kind of electronic payments too, right? But in a case like Amazon or Apple or some of these other big players, you can actually create money, right? In sort of a way like you look here with Bitcoin, right? So you're not naturally tied one for one saying, okay, here's, let's just for the sake of argument saying, here's a US dollar, right? Here's a US dollar balance, and then you're going to basically use an intermediary to go and pay, which is what your credit card is doing, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, you have to come up with the US dollars to pay off your balance on your credit card, let's say, right? It could be a debit card too, maybe. So you're not really creating currency there. You just kind of, the credit card is just a convenience to pay whatever you were going to be buying, whatever store is taking your credit card, let's say. So that's fine. That is, you're paying electronically, right? Um, but there's the idea of essentially creating digital currency, right? So you're kind of creating some store of value that's totally decoupled from. I keep on coming back to the U.S. dollar because we're in the U.S., right? So then you create like this balance or currency to pay. So that's kind of also under this category of electronic payments, right? There's the one, like I said, which I just mentioned, where you just basically, you know, having something, let's say a bank account that has, you know, let's say you have $100 in your bank account, and you're just using an intermediary, let's say a credit card or some other channel, to uh, take that credit of $100 and spend it on whatever products you want to buy. So that's one way to look at electronic payments. I'm sure a lot of you, anyone who's probably bought anything online knows that experience, right? Then there's the other aspect that goes beyond that, which is what I was just mentioning, where you're creating a store of value that is not tied to, let's say, your US dollar bank account, right? And then you're also paying off of that. And that's kind of opens the door in terms of like, you know, Amazon, I keep on coming back to Amazon. I mean, it's just a natural example, right? But let's say Amazon providing you financing, right? All of a sudden you step into financial services. You try to, you know, do various numbers of things that you can imagine financial services do, right? Either taking in money, sending money, financing, right? You know, taking interest and all that kind of stuff, all within like that quote unquote currency, right? Or store of value. That all falls under, you know, or is related to electronic payments. Okay. So hopefully I didn't digress too much, but there's a lot of these type of things with regard to electronic payments to the point of like, you know, this, especially in this day and age with COVID and whatnot, there's probably very little reason for you to carry cash around, right? Um, which, you know, may be good or bad depending on the situation. And that's what this chapter is about, right? So this chapter is talking about all these different things or conveniences that we're getting from technology, which are pros, I guess, right? And then cons would be things that maybe not so good, right? So in terms of like, well, let's look at what are some of the potential downsides to this, right? So if right now, for whatever reason, I want to do something with cash, there's not too many ways like people, government or whatever, can track me on me spending money, right? But if I am using, let's say, Amazon payments or one of these other providers in terms of cash, I mean, in terms of money to spend money on things, um, all of a sudden I'm leaving much more of a footprint that's traceable um, by any number of people, right? And depending on who you are, that value of that information can mean a lot. And it could also mean that your privacy is at risk. Okay, you put it that way, for better or for worse, right? Some people don't mind that. I say, okay, that's fine. Like people know that, I'm doing all these different things. That's okay, right? Um, and it's not even just how you spread this information around, but it's how people use this information, right? In some ways, they might use this information. You might be okay with it, right? In other ways, you may not be so happy with the way they use the information specific to you, right? So there's sometimes that people use this information at an aggregate level to refine their product mix that they're offering to the wider population, whatever, or services and stuff like that. But in other cases, they're leveraging information specifically to the individual, in this case, yourself, right? So that's where things can go a little like haywire, a little bit messy, and you have to kind of worry about things like that, where, who's to say like all that information is 100% accurate? You're going to probably care about whether it's accurate or not when you're trying to get a loan and your whoever the credit providers are don't have accurate information. Maybe someone has stolen this information and really trashed your credit. You're not going to be able to get rent on an apartment. You're not going to be able to finance your house or whatever situation is that relies on your credit score, right? So there are things that are specific to individual and your information, whether either through normal means or through hacking or whatever, that information is not something that you want out there to count against you. Likewise, if you go into your health, right? If someone knows all of your health information, which they can derive, like if you're buying medicine, among other things, they can figure out like what is your health situation, and I might choose to not give you health insurance because of whatever your health situation is, right? You're not going to be very happy about those type of situations. Or God forbid that information is incorrect, again, you're going to have like a whole world of problems. So that's kind of some of the downsides with these type of things, right? The electronic payments is great, it's convenient, right? You don't have to carry cash around anymore. You can do things very quickly. Money moves around very quickly. Supposedly, it's very secure. Supposedly, like, mistakes in terms of money moving around too quickly are addressed. I'm not sure if that's 100% true or not. So I give you some recent examples you may have seen in the news where money moved around too quickly, whether it's like false requests for wire transfers. Someone made a mistake, wherever, whether it's individual or the bank, they sent the money to the wrong person. Maybe it was a scam, whatever. And because, in the old days when things were had to settle more traditionally, people had to like vet things. They had to like, say, is this the right money? Do you actually have that money? All that kind of stuff. It would take a few days to settle something, right? But over time, because things are more and more electronic and supposedly secure and accurate, you're almost getting to the point where you can have real-time settlement, meaning like my money, I'm going to send it to you and you get it like right away, not like a few days later. All well, good. If everything is accurate, everything is good. But if it's not good, so one of the electronic payment providers on here that's not displayed is like Venmo, right? Venmo, I think, is pretty popular these days to send money around. And they do provide a check in there to, have some sort of verification that you're sending to the right person, right? So you have to punch in their phone number, right? Or you could punch in their phone number, right, to verify who they are, but you don't have to. So you could theoretically send money to someone else by accident, right, for whatever reason. Good luck trying to get that money back if you made a mistake, and the money basically hits up on their account almost instantly. So there is like these type of pitfalls and challenges that we have to worry about with respect to electronic payments. So I won't dwell into it because I guess this will become like an extremely long lecture if I go into like all of the details on the pros and cons about electronic payments. But hopefully that gives you a taste of it. And I think the book also covers more explicit examples. And like I said, my suggestion on this part of the course is to really read the book, understand those questions at the end of the chapter for this, because that's pretty much where the exam questions are going to be driven off of for this, right? My role as a lecturer here is just to elaborate a little bit more on these topics, and stir some discussion or stir some food for thought. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox a little bit and I'll just move on a little bit here. All right, so here we are on the topic of collaboration. So, again, you'll see this over time if you've been out in the workforce where, there's more of this collaboration with people, and they don't even necessarily have to be in the same physical location as you, right? Through the power of internet, there's all kinds of things where people can be cooperating, working together over like a large geographic space, right? It doesn't matter to a certain extent, right? And, you have, stuff like this in terms of collaboration. And, going back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of Excel, right? And, actually, I have to say Microsoft has not really been that great in this space for a while. They've really been spending a while to try to get themselves working better with this. And even now, they're not super good with it. But like Google is a bit better, although Google has its own issues when it comes to like the corporate side of things. But the idea of like, let's say the Excel sheet, right? Or you had a Google sheet, right? And you have it set up in sort of a more collaboration mode. The whole team, whatever the team may be, it may not be in the same room, can be working on the same spreadsheet at the same exact time, right? So in the old days, you have to have a copy of this spreadsheet and you would send it around to different people, right? And I would make my change and then maybe I make a copy of it, or maybe I just send it to the next person. They would make a change and then they would send it back to me. I mean, it was just like not great, let's put it that way. But now, we can all hop on a Zoom call or whatever. We can share the screen. We can all be making updates to the same sheet at the same time, right? So it's much more of like us, almost like us. You can almost visualize us sitting around a table, and right, we're all kind of making our ideas. We're writing it down on this big, let's say whiteboard or something. We're all there. We're all kind of writing to the same space, making changes. We're talking to each other. We're getting feedback. And making all the changes rather than only one person can make an update at a time. And then they might send a copy of it to other people, right? So it's much more of a collaboration type of possibility with our technology right now, okay? So I just gave an example with like Google Sheets or Excel, but there's a lot of these type of things where the idea is that multiple people can be sharing, talking to each other, feedback and whatnot in one place. Okay. All right. So the next idea is filter bubble. I'm trying to, I think let me talk about filter bubbles and then I'll cut the video there before I get into like passwords and security and stuff like that. Okay. So filter bubble. So kind of like I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but I'll just kind of reiterate this. Um, whatever it is, whether it's Amazon or whether it's like Google News or Facebook or whatever, um, there's this idea of like trying to look at your patterns, your behavior, to allow the provider, whoever the provider is, to feed you things that you most likely would be interested in, right? So in the case of Amazon, it would be looking at your behavior and say, hey, this person looks like they're going through a change in their life. Maybe they're starting a family. So maybe I should be sending them like some baby products or other stuff that's related to what you do when you're gonna have a baby, let's say. Um, this person looks like they got a car, right? Maybe they're looking to do certain things to enhance the car. Maybe they want a better stereo or whatever, right? There's all kinds of different things that whoever the provider, I keep on coming back to Amazon, but they'll look at things and then they'll try to put things in front of you based on your past behavior, right? So the whole idea with the cookies that we talked about earlier in the class. Now, this also applies to like news, right? You know, there's a whole bunch of information out there or news topics that are out there, but you know, in the old days, you would get, let's say, a newspaper or a magazine, and you get everything, right? Because the newspaper was created with the wide population in mind, right? They're trying to meet the needs of a whole bunch of, or interests of a whole bunch of different people. But with the current state of technology, with social media and the internet and stuff like that, there is the possibility of basically tailoring the information to the individual's interests. Okay, so that's what the idea of filter bubbles come from, right? So let's say you're very much into scientific articles. You're always kind of looking at those type of things. So over time, right, it may not be immediate, but over time, you'll also start to see like, oh, yeah, actually, instead of getting a whole bunch of different, let's say, news articles from Google News, you start to see like a huge percentage of it focused on scientific articles, let's say, right? And that applies to like a much more narrower focus. Like if you're interested in a particular like movie or like TV show or whatever topic, right? You'll start to see more and more articles that they serve up to you to be um, all about that, right? To the point where, you know, even if you are open to idea of like something totally different, maybe you're into like, you know, let's say from a movie or a TV standpoint, you're very much into comedies or you're into whatever drama or something like that, science fiction, whatever topic it is. So it's going to, over time, it's going to gradually be focused more and more on that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that uh, that's all you're interested in. You could be interested in other things if maybe you're exposed to the right thing, right? Who knows, right? But you never get to that point because of the way the technology is set up right now to focus, giving you more of what you already did in the past. So in the past, you're always like interested in particular topics. It would just keep on reinforcing that, right? As opposed to like presenting the idea that you can learn something new and you can change your mind about something and get new interests. So that's what filter bubbles are all about. And you can see this, I'm not going to read this word for word for you. But basically it's basically keeping the individual, in this case, focused on what they've done in the past, and keeping them on a going forward basis focused on whatever their particular interests are. So there's a pro to that, right? It makes things more convenient to you because you don't like to read all of the Wall Street Journal or let's say New York Times, only to keep on picking at the couple of topics that you're interested in. You know, so it's convenient, right, to give you those type of things. If it's something in terms of products, to give you something that you're most likely interested in purchasing, right? But the downside is that it doesn't really allow you any room for growth, to change your interests, to update your view on the world, those type of things. So that's the idea of a filter bubble, okay? Uh, So here, this kind of illustrates different things on filter bubbles with respect to political leanings, to climate change, things like that. But it's along the same lines where once you're in one side, you'll keep on getting data points or news to reinforce that side of things, right? So it's kind of like a less balanced view of things, pros and cons, or in this case, right and left view on things. Okay, so that's what the filter bubbles are all about. So this talks about the onion, talking about like news satire and stuff like that, and maybe some aspect of this in terms of like fake news and whatnot. In this current day and age, it's getting harder and harder in some cases to really distinguish all aspects fake news. So it's easy for you to maybe look at something end to end, like let's say a big article that covers something where almost like end to end, it's all like exaggerated or all like unsubstantiated types of news. It's maybe easy for you to pick that out, right? Maybe not, depending on how it's written and depending on what your outlook in life is. But if it's something where it's not 100% like not true, maybe there's only a certain percentage of it, maybe that's a little bit exaggerated or unsubstantiated from a quote unquote reliable source, then it's hard for you to pick those things out, right? And it's just a very hard world to really pick these things out. And so they talk about, like, let's say the onion, right? Where, how much of the population will look at some of these articles and actually they think that's real, right? They don't even, they can't distinguish. And you might think, well, yeah, how can that be, right? But like I said, depending on how things are written, like if it's not totally like out of this world, and sometimes you can't really tell, it's very believable, right? Sometimes people can't tell the difference, and like people think that's the real news, right? And this kind of relates to the just overall idea of fake news, and that kind of builds on this idea of like the filter bubble too. Okay, so I'm going to cut the video here before we step into passwords and security and things like that. That'll be a new topic for a new video. Okay, thank you.